Welcome to Telewizja Republika. The U.S. Congress is poised to approve a comprehensive foreign aid package totaling $95 billion, targeting strategic support for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. TikTok is also involved in a way. This legislative effort underscores a global commitment to international stability and includes provisions for humanitarian aid and economic support across various regions. Initiated by President Joe Biden last fall, this package aims to address the escalating conflicts involving the beneficiary nations. Despite early Senate approval in February, the proposal was delayed in the House due to some members linking foreign aid to domestic policy reforms such as immigration. However, recent global events, including increased conflict in Israel and Russian advancements in Ukraine, have accelerated legislative proceedings. Recent geopolitical shifts catalyzed Congress to prioritize the passage of the package. The House passed the bill following intense deliberations, and the Senate expedited its process by shortening its recess to ensure timely voting, demonstrating a concerted effort to respond to urgent international needs. Experts from think tanks have provided insights into the strategic implications of the aid, highlighting its importance in bolstering the defense capabilities of Ukraine in particular. This support is deemed crucial for Ukraine as it continues to face significant military pressure from Russian forces that we report on our program. The aid package directs approximately $61 billion to Ukraine, which includes funding to replenish American munitions and enhance military operations. Notably, the aid aims to significantly upgrade Ukraine's arsenal with advanced weaponry. This includes high-tech air defense systems, such as additional units of the Patriot missile system and portable anti-tank weapons to enhance frontline defenses. Moreover, provisions for sophisticated drone technology and cyber defense capabilities are included to counteract Russian electronic warfare tactics. This $26 billion is allocated to Israel to support its defense amidst ongoing regional conflicts, and $8 billion is earmarked for Taiwan and other Indo-Pacific allies to enhance their security posture amid rising tensions. Yeah, that's the global war we are witnessing. Beyond military aid, the legislation encompasses economic sanctions against adversarial nations like Russia, Iran, and China. A notable financial measure within the bill is the authorization to seize Russian assets, using them to help fund Ukraine's reconstruction efforts, an action aimed at both punishing aggression and supporting recovery. And, of course, this whole thing has a context of a visit of a Polish President Andrzej Duda in New York. We talked about it. We've been there. We talked to President Andrzej Duda, as our viewers know. So we're going to talk about those contexts on our program tonight. You can join us here. That's our Substack, rackracon.com. You can leave us your email. We'll get back to you with our reports from various front lines of the same global war that we always talk about on this show. My name is Michał Rachon, and this is Racon. And we roll in.
Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go!
To talk about it, we have arranged a meeting with a friend of our show, a man who knows everything or almost everything about the Washington politics, and is also an author, and you can find his text on Substack, Policy and Sausage Making. That's the title of the Substack. Professor Mark Strand is again on Telewizja Republika. Great to have you again, sir, on our program.
Oh, it's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Professor, you wrote an analysis of the situation that the whole world, or actually the whole Eastern NATO flank, is talking about for some time. And it looks like the whole America is also talking about it as the presidential campaign momentum gains and gears up. What is the meaning of the Mike Johnson strategy regarding the, let's call it, Ukrainian bill, or actually putting separate bills regarding the issue that we are talking about here? What is the Johnson strategy that you write about in your article?
His strategy was to basically take the Senate bill that passed last year and divide it into four. One vote on Ukraine, one vote on Israel, one vote on Taiwan, and then another vote to do with some other military matters like TikTok, the ban on TikTok. The strategy was smart because some of the Democrats' support for Israel is fading as they worry about what's going on in Gaza. And of course, we've seen some of the Republican support has been fading for Ukraine. There's a danger if he tried to combine them both that he could have had a large vote against it. So he separated them. And as we had projected, there was a huge majority for aid to Ukraine, huge majority for aid to Israel, almost unanimous majority for aid to Taiwan. And the strategy worked. It turned out to be brilliant, despite the fact that he's been under threat for doing it.
Sorry to interrupt you, but the obvious question right now is if there were majorities for each of those bills, let's put it this way, why isn't it the same majority that could be voted together?
You know, it's an interesting thing because just politics in the United States is kind of screwed up right now, if I can put it kind of bluntly. And it's very odd that you would have so many different people taking different shots on American foreign policy. Normally, people support the president's foreign policy. It's kind of an American tradition, but that's really not been happening in this case. Johnson's problem was that he had this large majority all along. I mean, we knew this was the vote. We've been saying that all along. It was how he could get it to the floor. And to a certain degree, the Republicans in Congress have sabotaged themselves with their own rules. And the rules made it so that only a single person can force Johnson out of his job. And then he's at the mercy of the other party since the Republican margin is so small. There's another one that blocked him from the main tool of agenda control, which is called the House Rules Committee. It's the most important committee no one's ever heard of. Its sole job is to determine the rules for debate on the House floor. But every bill has to get through the Rules Committee or else it doesn't get debated at all. So Johnson was blocked on his own Rules Committee. He had to wait till he could get Democrat votes to support the effort, and then it became a bipartisan landslide. So
you are actually mentioning, and I admit that's true, our sources in Ukraine claim that that's exactly the case, that the thing was that the people in Ukraine who are fighting over there were afraid that the support, the financial and military support from United States will be late before the Ukrainian front collapses. Now, as you write in your article, looks like there is a chance that the money and the gear, which is the most important thing here, is going to make it. So Ukraine is going to get the support before the front lines collapse under the Russian pressure. Was it an important factor? Was it an important element of putting the bill right now by the Republican majority of the House of Representatives?
I think there were two factors that had to do with the timing. One of them was, of course, Iran's attack on Israel, which sped up the desire to get Israel replenishments for its air defense. But I think there's no doubt that Mike Johnson was influenced by the fact that the Russians were gaining strength. Johnson gets accused of being anti-Ukraine, which there was one vote, he voted against it. But I think for the most part, he's a Reagan Republican, much more than a Trump populist. He's very conservative, but he's not blind to the foreign policy needs of the United States and the need to act. His problem was basically he couldn't find a way to get it done. But he was increasingly influenced by, I think one of the big influences were some of the ministers who came and told him about the Russian attacks on Christians in Ukraine. And the other one was a lot of CIA information saying, look, you have to go now because if we don't move soon, the front could collapse.
So we know about the William Burns briefing. It was, I think this information was available in the media. And we also know that the friend of our show and the man who you do know very well, Stephen Moore, was an author of the long-standing narrative and the story that wasn't heard before in United States about Russia being a state attacking evangelical Christians in Ukraine. Why the latter is so important? I think we all understand why CIA briefing is important, but why the second thing was so important in passing this legislation.
It's partly because of who Mike Johnson is. I mean, he is a very devout Christian Baptist. And so I think he was, he had heard a lot of what the Russian propaganda was. And I'm embarrassed to say how extensive a lot of the Russian propaganda has been circulated amongst conservative Republicans, including the idea that somehow Putin was doing this to defend Christianity, which of course nothing could be further from the truth. And so it was important for him to finally hear for himself what a lot of these ministers were saying. The interesting thing is they first met with his wife. And she told him, you have to meet with these people. And Johnson went ahead and did that. And I think he was very moved by the persecution he saw facing the Christian church in Ukraine, as well as the tens of thousands of kidnapped children.
Yeah, that's actually the reason for which people of Vladimir Putin's circle are wanted by the International Criminal Court. Those are exactly the things that you just mentioned: kidnapping the children and the crimes against the children in Ukraine. When we talked to the Polish diplomats who were part of Polish President Andrzej Duda, we talked after President Duda's last visit to Washington 1 month ago. Polish president met Speaker Johnson, and from the information that we got from the Polish diplomats was that Speaker Johnson was very well informed about the real situation in Ukraine. He was indeed informed about the threats, about the risks, about the level of Russian atrocities. So something politically had to happen. Which of those factors that we talk about was the most important? Was it the Iran attacking Israel? Because it looks like a completely new aspect of the thing. And actually, when we listened to the Mike Johnson's speech, he mentioned Iran as a part of the old narrative of axis of evil. He didn't use this phrase, but we remember this phrase being used by George W. Bush years ago.
Yeah, and I think that's had a big impact. Clearly, the attack in Iran gave momentum because Republican support for Israel, Iran's attack on Israel, Republican support for Israel is very strong. And so it made it easier for some Republicans to go to the floor. I mean, part of the problem all along has been the political timing for Johnson. He's been facing threats of being kicked out of his job. And I think that doesn't scare him so much. The idea that we would have been paralyzed for weeks again. And then, of course, aid to Ukraine wouldn't have gone through at all if he gets removed from office. So he's been trying to figure out the balance, how he can do that. He was helped by the fact that Donald Trump came out, and now twice now. Last weekend, he had come out and said he strongly supported Mike Johnson. But then last night, he did the same thing, too. He once again basically told Marjorie Taylor Greene, who now has the unenviable moniker of Moscow Margie, is now, he said, basically, cool it. Enough. We don't need another shutdown. We don't need to lose the speaker before the election. It would disrupt things. It makes it look like we can't govern. And that would undermine our chances of winning in November. So Trump, to a certain degree, has helped Johnson just by coming out and saying he's doing a good job.
Yeah, our viewers know we talked about it last week that we are going to be in the United States last week, and we were there. We were in New York. We were witnessing and accompanying Polish president in his meetings in New York, and among those meetings was a meeting with Donald Trump, 45th president of the United States, in Trump Tower. What do you make of it? It's not a common thing for a former president to meet the actual president of a foreign state. I've read a couple of comments on Twitter from the people who obviously do not like Donald Trump. Why does he meet president and head of other states? He is a former president, not a president of the United States of America. But what do you make of this meeting? Because obviously Ukraine and Russia was a topic of this conversation.
You know, I think it was a very smart move by President Duda. He think protocol-wise, he did it right. He met first with the president of the United States, with President Biden. So it wasn't that he avoided the president. He met with him first. But then meeting with former President Trump, who may once again be President Trump, was very smart because Poland has an outsized influence, I think, on the thinking of Donald Trump. Donald Trump kind of despises Western Europeans who lecture him, in his view, without backing it up by supporting NATO strongly. You can't say that about Poland. Poland has been a number one, I think, strong ally in NATO to the United States. And the Americans have a great deal of sympathy for Eastern Europe in ways that, that I think goes even into the sort of isolationist bloc of Republicans. So President Duda has a bit more influence on Donald Trump than I think other people might. For instance, if Macron came over and talked to him, would not have the same impact as having the Polish leader. The fact that they are saying not only, should you do 3%, we're doing 4%. And by the way, if you would like to host nuclear weapons in the United States, in Poland, to hold up the Soviet Union, Russia, we're there. And it goes back to, of course, the idea that Donald Trump likes strength. He believes the military can prevent war by being strong. He's not active. He doesn't like to go to war, obviously. He did in the first 4 years. He used it very sparingly. But you notice when he did use it was when he gave his word. In Syria, we drew a red line at chemical weapons. Well, President Obama had done that too, except when they violated it, Donald Trump responded. He took out Iranian leader, military leader, when they were killing Americans. He's saying, we're not going to let you get away with it. So he does believe in strength, even if he's not necessarily supportive of a lot of wars.
Using the mother of all bombs in Afghanistan was also the same example of what you just mentioned. Yeah. My final question is a question of the political campaign. Because my view, I of course do not have a deep knowledge that you got about the American world of politics, but is it fair to say that for Donald Trump to be elected for president of the United States, a kind of a balance between his stance towards Russian-Ukraine conflict that he maintains for many months is important, but it looks, at least from my perspective, like he needs some kind of nuancing this approach, and that's the way I read the proposal of a loan being a part of this $61 billion bill. Was this meeting useful for Donald Trump, the meeting between Duda and Trump in Trump Tower, in that context, in his presidential race, in his image shaping ahead of elections?
I think that's very perceptive. I think that clearly Trump was trying to send a signal that he wasn't really opposed to this. I mean, he could have come out against it, as he has other things. So he was sending a signal he wasn't really opposed to what Johnson was trying to do on Ukraine. Meeting with President Duda supported that. It was another signal that he was supportive of our Eastern European allies, which kind of implies you're supportive of Ukraine. He has sort of this deal on the table, and I think that's partly for campaign purposes, the art of the deal. Yeah, I'll make a deal to end the war in one day. But I think he also realizes that Ukraine has to survive through the election for him to be able to make any kind of deal whatsoever. So clearly, Trump was sending signals that he wasn't opposed to this bill. I don't think he wanted it to be a campaign issue. It divides the Republican Party right down the middle. So getting the issue off the table before the election probably helps him solidify the party. And it also allows him more options if he does become president, so that he can make a deal or he can try to influence the outcome of the war. The deal he has on the table, I think, is not very attractive. But I think from his point of view, he's just trying to say, I'm the deal maker. Vote for me. President Biden is screwing up. He's not making the deals he needs to make. I'll go and I'll fix Iran. I'll fix Russia. I'll fix China. Don't worry. I'll do it all on the first day.
Fix whatever you want to. The art of the deal is, of course, as our viewers know, the title of Donald Trump's book. Professor, thank you very much for maybe one more question, and that's the final
Sure.
question. Because actually you said something very interesting. Ukraine losing to Russia would certainly mean a similar thing to losing in Afghanistan in the shameful manner that the whole world was watching while U.S. was withdrawing in that manner from Afghanistan. And that's interesting because there are a lot of voters in U.S. There are a lot of Republicans who do not want United States to be involved in Ukraine, but it seems to me that on the other hand, the same people do not want to see U.S. failing to Russia. Is that a spectrum of different views that both presidential candidates have to maneuver within?
Well, I think this is, again, President Biden has a huge weakness with the Afghanistan withdrawal. It was a disaster. And you can go right to the top because he's commander in chief. So he doesn't need a second one. And a collapse of the front in Ukraine would very much be the exact same thing, politically speaking, in the United States, that, here our president has failed again. So there's no doubt that that is a very significant issue and that President Trump will use that issue of competency in dealing with foreign affairs in the election campaign. The other thing that I think people just starting to realize that if Russia wins in Ukraine, the border NATO has directly with Russia becomes about 1,000 miles longer. It goes all the way from Romania through Hungary up to Poland. Is a whole new border that NATO has to defend, which is going to cost a lot more money in American defense as well. So I think people are starting to realize there's a hardcore group of isolationists, probably about 17, 18, 19 Republicans who are just against everything. The rest are much more reasonable, and I think you can get to them. There were about 70 votes for Green's margin to cut money to Ukraine. There's more votes for that in the final passage, but part of that is the political term of, I'm going to vote no, but pray for yes. Yeah, and I think that's what you saw a whole bunch of Republicans doing. This solidified support for Ukraine. I don't think you'll ever have this question come up again in the near term. It's just as well. They got a large sum of money that will last through the election, so both sides are happy. But I think it also bodes very well for the future aid to Ukraine that overwhelmingly 3/4 of the Congress supported Ukraine when push came to shove, and they had to put their names on the line.
It looks like your point that this is actually taking the issue off the table ahead of the critical moments of the presidential campaign is the most important thing here. Professor Mark Strand, thank you very much for walking us through the labyrinth of Washington politics. All our viewers can subscribe to Professor Strand's Substack account, Policy and Sausage Making. That's the title. You can find it easily. Click subscribe. Very interesting. I'm a happy subscriber and follower, so I highly recommend it to our viewers. Professor, thank you very much, and see you next time.
Thank you, and thank you. You're a breath of fresh air in the news media, so it's a pleasure to be part of your show.
Great to have you on our program. Thanks a lot. See you soon. Ladies and gentlemen, you can join us on our Substack, rachon.com. That's our website. You can find us here. You can leave us your email, and we'll get back to you with the latest reports on the ongoing war against the Western civilization that we try to cover on our program. We come back tomorrow. Looks, I've just found out that we are going to be tomorrow in a very interesting place, not necessarily in Poland. Ciao, bye-bye.